Do you know how to make it bigger on the screen? Or anybody else, Greg? Yeah.
There we go.
Is that too big?
No.
All right, so tell me what you think about the minutes.
Was John on this committee?
No, I think it was one more. Oh, it was Tamara.
Oh, the guys not coming?
Yeah, I haven't
And her
seen.
husband Dean.
Yeah, I didn't get into the why this week, so I haven't talked to them.
Now, are we doing anything to, like, this is the last, next week is the last week right before they go to school. They be going back the 6th or the 7th or the 8th, or however y'all do it now. So,
I haven't
So
set
we'll
the
keep
meeting
doing
yet.
this for a while. It kind of gets slowed down because the writing takes more time. Tell me what you think about the minutes.
I wanted to know, when it does come out, will we be seeing the calendar for the 2016-17 school year? That way we can read up what's going on, or do we go online and look that up and go all that stuff?
Do they have the calendar available?
Yeah, the calendar should be out. I received a copy.
Well, like I said, I'll look online, because it's always got something on city schools.
Where can you get it down here?
You know, is anybody a PC user?
Yeah.
Would you mind driving?
Sure.
I'm having a hard time with the controls here. We could pull up our CSD maybe into the meeting today and see if we can find the calendar for you.
So what's the CRT again? City School District?
Our CSD
Yeah,
K1,
CSD,
2. Okay. So any comments about minutes? They look okay?
That's mine.
Oh, sorry.
So, I think, the questions are kind of what we talked about. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so to tell you what this is up here, you sent a great PowerPoint, and I didn't upload it to Google Docs. But Greg put together a PowerPoint with images and sort of like a few phrases or a small short paragraphs for each page.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 5 pages. It was really nice, and I definitely let's make sure that gets sent out to everybody.
You had copied everybody else
Yeah,
in
I
the
got a
group.
copy
Yeah,
of
I
everybody.
recall seeing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my idea was, I thought, as we go to ask these questions, kind of gives a context to the direction, kind of, added to I did the difference between busing or putting the money into schools, because we talked about that last week.
Right.
This is something to give a context to.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important to give a context. And so I want to get to the PowerPoint. I'm thinking that what the document that I started here was kind of the narrative of, we talked about wanting to give the history and then the results, so that, because we're gonna talk about, hopefully in these informational meetings, we're gonna do about a half-hour information to bring parents up to speed about the policy, and then maybe the second half we take questions, and we can apply these questions in there and have this all in a nice PowerPoint presentation. But there's a lot of details about the history that we need to give to people about how the policy came to be and why we think these are our recommendations. And not that we have to use this language, but this is just kind of where I started thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can kind of go through it and see if you want to add something or adjust it. It's not going to be this exactly, but
Well, because I was thinking about policy, and this, we're kind of tasked to outreach. That's what this group, and then you have the other committee is going to be looking at wording of the policy, right?
right.
So because I'm just,
Well, right, this isn't I was thinking that our informational meetings,
Mhm.
that we need to give people the background on the policy, how it started.
The current one.
So, yeah, the current one.
Yeah.
And so I think what we want to do is boil down the history and put it into a PowerPoint like the one that you
Okay.
made. So I liked your idea, but I think we need to add some more information.
Yeah.
Because people might, I wish I had it in front of us, but people might look at your PowerPoint and say, so why are you recommending this? What's the history again? Like,
Yeah.
how did you get to this recommendation? So I wanted to backload it with some, the story behind it.
I should be able to get it on my
Oh,
email.
great. Yeah, maybe we can take a look at it.
Yeah, right over here. And well, I was kind of hoping that that's what you just said. Only it would be, I thought this would be context, and then you can give the history, and we could understand what direction we're going to go in, with busing and safety and those kinds of things. But yeah, I was kind of thinking exactly how you were.
Okay. So maybe the idea today would be, what are the specifics of what we want to make sure we get out to parents in our informational meeting? What do we want to make sure they get from the context, the history, and we'll get to the recommendations definitely, but we want to just make sure we hit all the pieces that we want to put in
If
the
they're
information.
oblivious to education themselves and they didn't get the education they wanted, they can get their GED and go to other places. So they don't have to play catch up with their child. They can work with their child and the child can work with them. Because I had to brush up on my algebra skills, certain things I couldn't teach my kids. I had to go, I'll go to the library and look at books and get the book from whatever. Well, everybody's kind of like that. Now that we got all this technology, the parents can go to different places, Oasis, different places to get their GED and whatever, so they won't have to feel inadequate to their child.
Oh, yeah.
Inadequate to us.
That's
They can learn.
that's a good
They can learn to still that they can get education. You're never too old to learn. And make
Yeah,
it
that's
fun
an
for
important attitude to have.
and make it fun for them as well as their children.
Yeah.
My son, when James and the Giant Peach came out, I was not interested in the movie, but the book was very fun. And my son was like, "Mommy, we got to read the book since I can't go to the movie." Wasn't that I didn't want to take him? I didn't have the money like that. But we read the book and he enjoyed it.
That's good.
37 school.
That's great. So I would think that we would want to put these questions that we worked on into the PowerPoint and in the second half of the meeting, right? So kind of what we worked on last week was the second half of the information
Right.
meeting. These are the questions that we want to do. And then today, we want to talk about what are all the points that we want to make sure we get in the information.
Because I was hoping we could reword, do some better wording than what I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. So you have any luck here?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, maybe we can go back to the, if that's in trouble, we can go back to the other one and see what progress we can make. Okay. So why don't we just kind of read this together and see if, thinking about the best way to do this. May we read out loud? Can we just read out loud?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. History. So imagine we're giving in our informational meeting to the public. There have been many discussions about what equity might look like in a city that has poor and wealthier neighborhoods as well as schools that reflect this inequitable reality. The district is morally and legally obligated to educate all students who are enrolled in the district in a fair and equitable way. This means the district must work to improve all schools, including the lowest and the least chosen schools. In the late 1990s, the School Choice Committee convened to look at this problem and come up with recommendations for policy that would do a better job of addressing these inequities. Around the same period, the early 2000s, the federal education law, No Child Left Behind, was passed. that in a similar spirit of inequity problems required districts to offer families of students in underperforming schools the ability to access more successful schools within the district. After the committee's extensive work and final report, in 2001, the Board of Education voted to approve a managed choice policy for elementary school assignment that the committee had developed. The policy was based on the concept that parents should be able to choose the public school they deemed best for their child. It also included 5 principles of commitment to a fair selection process amongst all schools, continuous school improvement, timely information to parents, and ongoing monitoring and evaluation of this process. So that history piece was basically boiled down the policy document into 3 paragraphs, so people get a quick story about how it was developed. And these are the policy elements. The policy divided the district into 3 zones, the Northwest, Northeast, and South. Instead of being restricted to school assignments according to neighborhood, families now had a choice of schools within an enlarged zone so as to provide more school options. So we went from small neighborhood, you went to your neighborhood school to the zone.
So with the South, there's no Southeast or Southwest,
It's just one. Yeah, and the reason they did that, I think, is because there weren't as many schools in the South on either side of the river as there were in the North, so they just combined it.
policy.
Oh, yeah, families now had a choice of schools within enlarged zones so as to provide more school options. In order to limit transportation costs, families were restricted to choices within their own zone. But there were some exceptions around special ed students, English language learners, and mid-year family moves. The district made some exceptions there. But otherwise, people were supposed to stick to schools only in their zones. The family mandated a computerized lottery with the following priorities. 1, sibling preference. 2, 0.5 proximity preference for 60% of available seats. And 3, socioeconomic status fairness guidelines for ratios at school level. It structured the coding so that students received their second and then third choice if the first couldn't be accommodated. So we're still just explaining what it was supposed to look like. The policy called for a handful of citywide schools to be centrally located and to recruit students from each zone proportionally. So citywides are supposed to have a proportional number of students from Northwest, Northeast, and South. That's the way the policy was set up. Citywide schools were to have special education classes for those with unique specific needs, and each zone was to have enough capacity to accommodate their instructional needs of special ed students not enrolled in the citywide schools. So for really special kids, there were supposed to be extra services put into the citywide schools so that because they were supposed to be centrally located and then people could access them from all parts of the city. That was the original idea of the city schools, citywides. Similarly, each zone was still supposed to have some educationally appropriate opportunities for English language learners. So that means, that didn't mean that only special ed kids would attend the citywide. They were supposed to have special ed services everywhere, but particularly a good representation of special ed services in the citywides.
Is there a way we can do something with the special ed, the IEP diplomas? I was regular ed. I never knew that certain colleges and schools don't have to accept IEP. They tell them that when they finish their IEP, they got to get their GED, or they can't go to schools like Continental, MCC, or whatever.
Right.
Because we do not want our special ed students. I know this is a special ed, form of special. We don't want them
To be shut out, yeah.
falling through the cracks.
Right, yeah. So that's a
And
whole,
I'm
that's a
sorry.
whole other issue.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's an important one, yeah. It's a whole other issue.
Because my son right now is going through a little pitfalls from that, and I'm trying to work it out with him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him motivated, because he's 29, and it's hard at that age.
Yeah, it is. Okay. The policy mandated that each zone have parent information and student registration centers. It also authorized establishment of a zone school improvement and visiting committee in each of the 3 zones. So that meant basically that each of the 3 zones was supposed to have, registration places where parents could go to and sign up their kids easily and conveniently. And then there was also the zone school improvement was going to work on the piece where we were supposed to be improving schools everywhere. we were supposed to, check and make sure the resources were equally distributed. So that was what it was supposed to do. The zone was to be charged with monitoring the buildings and reporting annual recommendations for improving low-performing and undersubscribed schools, as well as monitoring whether the zones had similar ranges of quality education services to one another. Okay, so those are the basic ideas behind what the policy was supposed to be like. So now, here's the section that we want to make sure that we explain carefully about what actually happened and what we want to make sure that people understand before we get to our recommendations. So, I'm taking the 4 areas that were just described above. They talked about zones. We divided the city into zones. We talked about how the lottery is supposed to work. We talked about the citywide schools and then these information centers and the zone improvement. So the first area is zones. The 3 zones were successfully established to provide more equitable school choices for parents, as well as being a reasonable response to the federal NCLB requirements. The proximity preference option for 60% of families living within a 5.5 radius from the closest school is designed to make it easier for families to select their neighborhood schools. So basically saying that we successfully divided the city into 3 zones. We did that well. And the 0.5 mileage was supposed to kind of encourage families to pick their neighborhood school. That was what we thought would help neighbors.
What's going to happen if they close 44 school now?
Yeah, well.
We're still fighting that one.
Yeah, we're still fighting. However, it said after 15 years of this policy, several troubling trends have emerged. Okay. First, only about 50% of families have ever participated in the lottery. So half are placed by the district's placement office. And I want to put a little citation in there so we get some data. The lottery has therefore become, and we could talk about this, a de facto tool used primarily by just the folks who use it, right? And those tend to be the more stable middle-class families, while the poorest and the least stable families tend to not participate. So in a way, it's become a tool for the families that are more engaged and kind of a confusing thing for families that aren't as well engaged. And go ahead.
No, I needed a backtrack.
Okay.
That 0.5 mile thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How was that? Because I could see the lottery portion, how the reason why it turned into what it turned into. I can kind of see that. But I don't understand how the 0.5 mile radius was supposed to get students into their neighborhood schools.
Well, that's a really good question. I think it was faulty thinking, actually.
Okay.
Maybe they thought that if people living closest to the school within 0.5 miles knew they had a really high chance of getting into their neighborhood school, they would just go there. But there aren't any incentives there, and it's still not a guarantee. But maybe that was the thought. I'm thinking that's why they did that.
It's like 20.
Because they reserved 60% of the seats in
Yeah.
every school for 0.5 radius folks.
60%?
If you're 0.5, then you don't get bused. Do you get transportation?
That's a separate issue.
That's
Yeah, that's a separate issue. I know you don't
Yeah.
currently.
So
But this
how
was
would they
just
get
about the
this-
placement.
So that's part of the
So
problem.
if they
Became
don't,
part of the problem.
so if they
Yes.
don't get into a school near their house, they won't get bused like they used to?
Not if they're 0.5.
If they're, so if you're anywhere underneath 1.5, you don't have busing. So that's a separate issue.
Yeah,
So it's so
separate.
complicated, we have
That's
to
what
kind of.
okay.
But when my
But I
sister,
think separate, but I think it really speaks to why this hasn't worked.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
well, when we
Because
lived on
it's
Genesee
really-
Street, we lived at 253 Genesee Street, which doesn't exist. When my sister, when we moved on Honored in Genesee, she had to leave and go to 19. My mother said, no way. Before they closed down 24th School on Linden Street, that's where she went to school. My mother refused for her to walk to 19th School.
Well, yeah, so the walking is a
she said,
huge-
because you said she had to leave, you're going to let her go to a school that I feel she can get bused. She
That's
said,
right.
can she go to 24?
And we're going to talk about this here next.
I'm
But
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
it's a great, but I think it's great that you asked that question, like, well, why was that considered an incentive? And in fact, I said, this is a draft, and I sent it to Willa, who was involved with the writing of the policy, and I said, can you check this and make sure my assumptions are right?
She's Willa?
Willa
No,
Powell.
Willa is the
Willa Powell, yeah.
commissioner, the other commissioner who's been, she hasn't been to the group
Oh, okay,
too
yeah,
many
I think-
times lately, but she's
She's been there for a long
around
time,
for a
right?
long
Yeah.
time. She
Mhm.
was
I think
involved
I
in the
remember-
committee.
I think
that
I
was just
remember her with my
mentioned.
son, when my son went to school, my kids went to school.
Okay. So, let's see, where we go.
Question mark.
Okay. Yeah, so did that answer your question about the .5?
Yeah.
So we're
I got
wondering,
it.
how was that an incentive? Maybe it didn't really have any impact. So
Okay.
we might want to say more, how was that an incentive? Because I want to make sure that they thought that was an incentive. But I'm thinking that's why they did the .5. I mean, can you think of any other reason why
Well, maybe
they would have
they were-
suggested .5 out
Because
of?
it didn't make sense to me what the heck was it had to do with anything. And so maybe they're just trying to encourage people, if you're .5, go to your neighborhood school.
Because
That's
you
what
have
they
a
were
higher
trying to
chance.
say.
Right.
Go to your neighborhood school.
But what's .5 around 4 and 2 school? Like you got 2 school, not too far from 4 school, and you know, because my son went to 2.
Yeah.
Or for my other son, he was blessed to go to 2, but it's
Right.
because he was in special ed, so he didn't have to go. Like all my children went to different schools, and I love that because that way they had their own identity. They didn't have to go through what me and my sister went through when we went to school together, and it made it. I like to go into 3 different schools because it made it. But they liked it.
Okay.
As
As long
went-
as the kids are happy.
one went to 29, one went to 37, the other one went to 2.
Okay, so let's move on. So, so we talked about the .5 thing, and was that an incentive? And then we talked about only half the families participated. Okay, so we're still talking about what actually happened when the policy was put in place. And then I wrote, in other words, the complicated navigation requirements of participating in the lottery and many families' lack of participation have unintentionally resulted in exaggerated inequities between schools. Meaning, if this set of families participates and this set of families doesn't participate, then they're going to get the goods first, and these guys are going to be left behind further and further, and then the gap widens. So it was unintentional, but that's what happened here.
And then what if one whole family goes to that school? It's like a lot of families live around each other, especially on streets if the parents still own the houses. And sometimes like 40 or 50 or maybe 100 out of those, this is 1,000 kids that go to school. So like 400 of those might be in one family.
Right.
I mean, it's surprising, but it happens.
Okay, anything you want to add to the point about some families using it and some families not using it?
Well, I think that a lot of them might not use it because they might be homeschooling, or taking the kids to, or they might be making the kids go to suburban schools, or they might be on their way to move.
I think that would be, this .5 thing would be something we could put more emphasis on to encourage those families who don't normally participate to participate.
That could be a recommendation.
Yeah, it's a recommendation because if that's what they use to, I guess, delineate between what school to go to, how to choose the schools you go to. Like you say, it doesn't work.
But I
Nobody
think-
knew that they needed that.
I think as John has talked about many times in our education committee meetings, so many families, even if they know of the lottery and know they could get into their neighborhood school because they're .5 right now, choose not to because of safety concerns and daycare concerns. They
Right.
have to leave for work
And we're gonna
and
get
they
to-
want their kid on a bus
Yeah.
early so they're out of the house.
Right.
So I think,
Yeah.
So it's the safety might be trumping
right,
the convenience, and so we'll get to that point right here.
Yeah.
So then all of those things were trumping because now if you have, like what you were saying, if you have a neighborhood school, but the parents got to be to work at 7,
Right.
then what do you do between that lag time?
Right.
And that's,
you put your
There's
kid on a
always-
bus,
Yeah.
be shipped across town, so
Right.
you know they're
Right.
under adult supervision.
yeah.
There's always daycare homes that, depending on if you can afford it or whatever, you can go to social service or go to somebody where the daycare home can take that child up until that time and then get them to school. And if you're making so much money a year or whatever, they can help you. Because there's some daycare homes that work with the schools or work with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're going to have to do to get any of this to work is to really stress to Albany, to the people who are going to make the busing decisions, that in the case of the city, if 80% of the kids are getting bused 1.5 miles or more because people are choosing busing, you're just spending more money than you would if you said,
That's right.
let's bus them all to the nearest school.
That's right.
And
That's right.
because then you encourage, when they're going to the nearest school, they soon find out, gee, I can walk home with Billy and stop by his place, or vice versa, so they'll get into the walking routine.
Right.
So you may still be only busing 80%, but
Yeah.
it's a short distance, and you build up community in the process of
That's right.
having neighborhood schools.
That's right. So this next paragraph gets right into that. Second, at some point, I want to find out when. The state established a rule for state-funded school busing that limited district reimbursements to 1.5 miles beyond. So this wasn't the district that did this, it's the state that said, we'll only give you money for your busing if it's beyond 1.5 and beyond. So the fiscally minded district translated this and to provision of busing only for students living 1.5 miles or more away from school. Those living closer to their school had to walk or get their own transportation. Many families who couldn't walk or drive their child the 1.5 mile distance, scheduling or safety concerns, selected schools further from home. Over the years, this is translated into longer bus rides for children, more transportation expenses for the district, dwindling numbers of families attending their neighborhood school, less family participation in the school, and the loss of schools serving as anchors to their neighborhoods.
So, are we going to be asking our outreach group or parents and families
If they agree with it. Or,
yeah, if they agree with it?
Yeah, so I see giving the history and then the results, and then this is kind of where you start to get people chiming in, like, oh, do you think that's true? Has this happened? And because we don't want to put out statements and claims that people disagree with, right?
What
So we
else?
want to get community confirmation or community change to our work if the community is saying something different than this. But
And either
so
way,
we need to state it and then get their response to it.
sorry, either way, we don't want any latchkey kids or kids that are by themselves when they get out of school, because parents work so much. If my mom wasn't helping me, if I wasn't, the kids would be by themselves and they get into trouble.
Right.
I think we need to be careful, though, that the board doesn't make decisions solely based on focus group input. Because if the focus group attendees, probably by default, are self-selected for parents who are engaged with their kids to a large degree and, are very present in how their kids navigate the school system. And we'll be missing out, perhaps, on the families that we really need to hear from
That's what makes this
for
so
them
important.
to confirm or
Yeah.
deny this
Mhm.
supposition. So I think to really be scientific as far as making any real policy changes, there should probably be something like a citywide survey of parents or something, where obviously you won't ever get 100% of people to take the survey, but just focus group input alone is going to be, by definition, a small percentage of the parents, and likely to be
It's a good idea.
the parents that are already very involved with their kids' education, and you'll miss out on the folks that can't be involved for whatever reason
Yeah.
right now.
I agree.
And
I agree.
That
We
could
have
really
to
skew this.
Right, we have to back up our data, we need to cite our references, we're making statements about 50% of the families didn't participate. We want to cite it. We want to have people confirm or disconfirm what we're saying about the reasons families didn't choose. And, a larger survey would be a
Excuse
great
me.
idea.
How many city schools do we have? Because it seems like we only got about 10.
There's about 52.
52 schools?
Yeah.
Still 52?
Yeah.
It seemed like they took a lot of schools off.
Well, we have lost some. That's true. Sixth school was the most recent one that was closed.
6 and 22 and 36.
That's all right in 22, yeah.
And 36.
36.
So would it make
Yeah.
sense, based on from what you're saying, would it make sense to find a way to target the other 50% that don't
Yeah.
participate? How do we, is that like a goal of
I think
ours?
we go through churches and,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Yeah.
And online.
Online,
An online
and
survey.
churches, and, yeah.
We got the website.
And then-
out there
Also,
everywhere.
those lists of people, because I noticed that like some of the superintendents are walking and knocking on doors to people who don't necessarily go to school all the time. That's a resource.
And they were showing on TV there are a lot of homeless parents and a lot of, they was talking about that one of the representatives came in to be on the representatives or a judge. There are a lot of homeless families and a lot of homeless children. So when you don't have an address to go to school and you're living out of mom's car,
Yeah,
you can only go to school until mom gets a job or whatever. So at least if she can put you in school for those 8 hours or 7 hours while she's looking for a job to get back on her feet,
Oh, yeah.
that's a problem too.
There are officially about 2,000 homeless kids in our district.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah,
Can
more
we
than
put-
2,000.
It's too bad that we don't have our questionnaire ready right now, because all these parents that are out in the lobby are precisely the ones we want to talk to, because they're here because they didn't get their
At the
kids
last minute.
registered earlier, and they're here to get them registered now.
I was going to ask, is this one of the three
Yeah, it's-
registration sites?
Well, maybe, just maybe, there would be a way to talk with placement people and get names of people who just signed up, right? Because then we could, because they're giving them our info. So maybe these are sort of the latest people who are registering are the ones we can start with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
These are great ideas, in churches and rec centers and barbershops, and I think there's a lot of places where we could. Libraries.
Yeah.
Forget the library. Yeah.
Because, I've had, experiences knocking on doors and that kind of thing, so
Yeah.
I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
Just talk to
What
people.
about the homeless shelters or the
Sure.
shelters?
Yeah, that's a great.
'Cause like I said, I didn't even know about I never thought about the homeless thing with children. I never even knew that children could get homeless until I watched movies about it, about children that were students and they were whatever. It made me ashamed of myself when I said I couldn't do certain things. So when I seen it, made me want to try harder. I never knew of anybody being homeless and having to go to high school, no parents, either at some homeless shelter, had to go to school and then go to college to get on their feet, or somebody like Antoine Fisher that was homeless and had to go to the Navy.
Yeah,
You know.
that's true. That's true. Okay, so let's keep going here. Oh, so that's as far as I got. I was going to do, you can just kind of scroll down. I was going to do a paragraph on exceptions, that is, go into more detail about the English language learners, the special ed students, families who moved in the middle of the year were allowed to stay inside their zones. I'm kind of circling back around to the exceptions to the policy, just so people get a sense of, not everybody stayed in their zones. These were the exceptions.
So,
And are there any ideas you have about exceptions that you want to make sure that so here's where we really have the conversation, because this hasn't been written. What would you like to say? What would you like to tell the public about the exceptions that were made to the policy? Anything about?
Exceptions like,
I was going to say if the child has been at that school and flunked a certain grade, they shouldn't be in that zone. If they flunked that grade 4 or 5 times or 2 times, they shouldn't go to another school.
let me rephrase my question. So the policy said all the families need to stay within their zones, okay? But there were some exceptions to that.
Yeah, well,
What were the
if they've
exceptions?
moved and if the kids want to stay in the same school,
Right.
that would be one of the things we've usually had. as
so
an
you want to
exception.
address these exceptions and see if
Yeah,
we
so
can
people
pull some of these
are going to
out?
say, well, if everybody stayed in their zone, then, didn't the policy work pretty well? And so actually, when we talk about the exceptions, we have to look at how many exceptions there have been, and how that led to the transportation costs.
I'm sorry, I hope
Right.
my question, what I said wasn't wrong, but some kids flunk grades a couple of times, and then they still have to stay in that same school, and they're not getting better, you know, and they have to stay in that same zone.
Well, that reminds me of voluntary transfers, that, you know, people can voluntarily transfer if they want to leave their school too. What was your
I was
question?
just thinking, can we scroll back to some of those exceptions?
That this is online.
Yeah, I mean, I only wrote about 3.
Yeah.
Special ed, like if you're a parent and say your child is autistic and there's no schools nearby that have services for your autistic child, then maybe you would wind up crossing zones to go to a school that did have the services. So I basically, what happened was, the intention was to have services within every zone, so families don't have to cross lines, but I think it didn't entirely happen.
Budgeting problem.
Didn't properly happen. So basically, all the services were not in all. That's why we had the citywide schools. We were hoping to have at least centrally located schools for special services. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about how
'Cause
that
was-
partially happened, but not completely. And so many of the exceptions, a lot of, I think, special ed students do travel far and move around a lot because there's this lack of services within their zone.
Do those services tend to shift because of one reason or another? I mean, like if you have a decent autistic community, but the administrator left or whatever there, and now so the second best place for those students becomes the number 1 place. Is things like that happen?
You know, that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to it. I have heard that special ed students do seem to be moving around a lot, and I don't know if that's because an administrator leaves or because they get reclassified and then therefore they need to be moved to yet another program.
Yeah, things like that.
You know?
Probably a
And a
combination.
lot of,
Yeah,
Several
so
things
maybe a
happening.
question is, what are the main reasons special ed students move around?
half the
That's a
kids
really
that are
good
in special ed don't even belong there. I got in there, they tricked me. They told me to go into a small class size. I didn't know I was in special ed until it was too late, and they put me back a grade. And I graduated late. I graduated in 85 from my sister.
Well, I know that there are a lot of problems with the special ed.
And what I had to do was, I talked to my teacher. I had to go through a whole bunch of transition, whatever. And then when I had to take remedial classes, I had to study 5 times harder. Like I'm going through that now. I still haven't gotten a college degree, and I'm going to go back to school. And I tell people that have learning divisions or whatever, keep trying. Like, keep trying. I'm going back to EOC. Keep trying. Don't let nothing stop you.
So,
That's the attitude.
so special education students tend to move around more than regular students?
I'm going to write that as a question. Do they
Okay.
move more? And I want to find out. These are some more questions too. Because if we get the answer to these questions, then we can state it in our information. Special ed students tend to move around more, and here are the reasons why. So those are important questions to answer.
People don't want to deal with them at times. They're more harder. A lot of times it's more emotional than it is educational. Because like I now, I'm gonna have to take medication to learn to calm down or whatever. I wasn't for that at first, but it might help. And a lot of children, they go through them. My son had to take medication because if you don't calm down, you can't learn. You have to listen, be focused, and be mindful in order to get the education.
Definitely complicated.
Well, see, they didn't play with us. With,
Yeah.
with us, the thing was the threatening and the beating. You can't do that no more. You have to talk to them and whatever. They might have been a little bit too harsh. Because if you don't get them to understand that they're going to need skills to get them in the workplace. Even though I'm different and I have difficulties, I can work. My mother tell you I will beat myself down about trying to get a job. Not beat myself down, but you know what I'm saying. I'm here talking to all of you people in a kind tone. I understand what's going on, and I'm willing to work with all of you. Like I told her earlier, it affects all of us.
Yeah, I appreciate your input here. I want to ask, does anybody have any thoughts about language learners? Do you know any
Well,
Anything that we should put in
should
about-
probably touch base with Anna Casserly. She does a lot of work, social work with the Hispanic community, and they've had a lot of difficulty over the years making sure that kids that have a learning disability are.
Where is she located? What is her
Well,
title? Or where is she?
I'm not sure where she works with the Hispanic community. She's quite active in the AQE Metro Justice
Okay.
Committee, and she shows
I'll
up at
find
a
her.
lot of the board meetings
She's
and does
probably
translating for some of
On
the people.
Facebook too, right?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll find her.
I'll get you her number.
Okay, well, so let's move on to the next one. Now we move into discussion of the lottery. Whoops, did we?
We've gone through all
Oh,
this.
yeah,
I went
okay,
back
I'm
up.
sorry.
Yeah.
I gotta remember what, okay, so I gave that a little title, Middle Class Departure. I think that the fact that, and I've heard this from people in this committee a lot, the fact that families didn't know or couldn't rely on getting placement in a school scared a lot of particularly middle-class families away from the district. They'd say, I'm going to homeschool, or I'm just going to go to a charter school, or I'm going to, move to the suburbs. So I think, I've definitely heard this a lot from folks that I'm sure that working class families would have liked to leave as well, but they don't have the resources to do so. But so what happened was the middle class families who did have the resources did leave. So we've lost a lot of students and a lot of the middle class.
You have to bring the-
Black, white, Latino, middle class.
Some of the people I
Across the
know
board.
who moved or changed schools did it based on reputation. Didn't even try.
Oh, okay.
They weren't even trying. They're not even thinking about trying to go into a city school. They're just gonna move because I know several families when there's kids got of age to start school, they just moved. They didn't even worry about it.
What I did with my children to make it fun for them and one of our parents, if you use Essence magazine, if you use like Parents magazine, highlights, the different magazines, instead of just depending on the teachers, like I said, and educate the children in the homes, turn off the TV sometimes, the computer sometimes, and let them see these different publications that will build up their minds, because I love highlights. I loved it Reader's Digest when they had the little stories for the kids, the children's Reader's Digest. All those different materials will help open up their minds. So reading materials in the home, basis plus the computer. We're not saying to take the computer out because the computer is here, but they need to learn to read books. The nooks and all of that is nice, but they need to read books because if they get into these reading, they even have an adult reading program at the libraries so that the children can get more. And that's what another thing, like what he said about not trying. If we put more things in the home to make it fun for city school district kids, because that's what they did for us. I never want to go to a suburban school because city school district made it fun.
Right.
I was learning opera and all that different
Yeah.
stuff.
So I'm thinking that the point that you just made a minute ago about you knew some middle class families who moved just based on the reputation. They didn't even try to do the lottery. They didn't even try and say, oh, I didn't get my school, I'm going to leave. So maybe we put that in there as well. I don't know how you talk about policy in terms of reputation of schools, reputation of the district. it's all sort of tied into the policy. The policy creates the district's reputation.
I don't know. Is it because like you can see the intent of the policy is to be as fair and equitable as possible, with including tons of choices that it seemed to me that they at least were trying to have the best outcome possible, and yet I guess it sounds to me like, take the middle class families I'm talking about that just moved, they probably didn't bother to read all this, or they don't even.
Since I've read a lot of it's a lack of understanding of the old policy. To know that
Too much to understand and too much to worry about, and
well, or yeah, just not even knowing it exists. You know what I mean?
I think it's some of that.
How would anyone know it really exists?
Yeah.
How
Of
many
the
parents?
policy.
Right. I mean, how many?
yeah, I think parents today don't even know how the
would
policy
even
works.
Right.
would think
So they're
to look
just,
for
you
it.
know,
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
the people on my street, I'm thinking of two families in particular, had younger kids, and when they got old enough to start, after kindergarten, they just left. There was no.
Yeah.
Even for parents who were aware of the policy, maybe they just weren't willing to take that chance of not being
60%.
in the
If they didn't
60%.
if they didn't live within 0.5 of any school, even, I mean, some people don't live within 0.5 of one school, so they
Right.
don't even have that 60% chance.
Right.
Well, see,
Right?
we have the schools right on the other side of the block, so it's really a couple hundred feet away. So it's, nowhere near 0.5 miles.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. It's a neighborhood school.
One of the things that we're going to be faced with, that we are faced with, that's a real problem, is trying to communicate with people and have them know to show up for a briefing or a meeting or something. We just went through the meeting yesterday for a review of what's going to be happening with School 16, and we had 30 people show up.
That's great.
Now, yeah, it is. We had maybe 2 new people that I hadn't seen before.
Okay.
We sent out, there were about 130 emails that went out to my regular mailing list. Now, maybe half those people have put a filter on it to keep that mail from getting to them. There were 700 on the location 19 list. There were 1,860 on the 19th Ward Crime Alert, which I, put out a thing. If you're tired of reporting crimes, try to build up your neighborhood schools.
So you wanted like 1,000 people there.
Well, you try to get to as many people as you
Yeah.
can,
It's
and
hard.
you get 2 maybe
Yeah.
new people, and it sometimes makes me think, what the hell are we doing on this committee if we think we're going to really get involvement? But
I think you got to remember, you had what, a week's notice?
Yeah.
For that meeting? That's not a lot for
No.
some people.
Yeah.
And it's
And
the end of
also-
summer, there's probably a lot of people on vacation.
it was a lousy week because of vacation, but we're going to have to face the fact that it's hard really getting through to, getting the message through to people.
Well, and also I think that we need to do it in sort of non-traditional ways. I mean, that's become the traditional way now. I mean, we were just talking about earlier, our list of churches and library and barber shops and homeless shelters, and we just need to go to different places.
Well, social media.
And social
Anything
media.
these days, you've
But-
got to use social media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you look down to number 15, which we haven't gotten to yet, I think that all of this, or much of this, and this is the argument that I would like to get to here. It's like the policy might have worked, actually, if we had really focused on the information and improvement piece, which we didn't. We totally let that go, right? And there were probably some fiscal reasons for that, but it seems to me that a policy like this, that there are some good intentions and good reasons behind it, but if you don't couple it with the information and improvement piece, it does what's happened in the
A
last
lot
15
of
years.
the-
So that's the piece we need to really talk about in these
Mhm.
information meetings, not just only to parents, but like when we bring this back to the board.
It's also important to make sure that we actually call people. Usually I'll see Tamara and Dean at the
Yeah.
Y if I go there. I was very busy running around getting a meeting
Sure.
ready. Didn't go there,
Yeah.
and they seem to have, a likelihood of not seeing the email when it comes in. So it's,
Okay. Well, so I think we're just about out of time here, but those were the last.
Oh, it's 5:30, not 6 o'clock?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, we could go over a few minutes, but I have another meeting at 6, and I should do a couple of things, but if there are some things that you would like to say about the lottery specifically, that would be about the sibling thing or the 0.5, or if you would scroll up to the thing on the
I
lottery.
want to know what was the benefits of the lottery, because I never heard, this is something new to me, because my children have been out of city school district since
Yeah, my kids didn't go in the lottery either.
Since 2007, so I wanted to know about this lottery and what's good about it, what's bad about it.
There it is. Oh, wait a minute. It was 1, 2, 3. There were 3 things that I did. Here it is. That's it. Number 5. So it was based on the parts of the lottery were the sibling preference, like if you had a sibling, that sibling could get in. That 0.5, if you lived close enough, then you'd have a higher chance, 60% chance of getting a seat. But then this third one, the socioeconomic fairness guidelines for ratios at school levels, what's that
Yeah.
about? Like, was that ever, whatever happened to that? So,
Well, how do you even use that,
I mean, there was something in the policy about folk looking at free reduced lunch. So what does that mean? Like, they looked at free and reduced lunch and I don't even know what to make of that. So,
I think perhaps at the time that they put that together, the numbers weren't as high as they are today.
right, because at some point it switched over to like 100%.
Mhm.
They just reimburse for all school lunches. But I guess at the time, I don't know what proportion of free and reduced lunch
Which you would do.
was in place back
Yeah,
then.
but a lot of, like what I used to tell a lot of kids, like my kids, they always used to, they got free lunch, they would want to have lunch money when I could do it. I would tell them to take last night's leftover dinner and take it to,
Yeah.
because that's what I do.
Well, I know with my students this summer, we had, I was running a program this summer, and the whole food thing is super important, particularly with students, to be able to do their best. But it seemed more of a convenience thing than anything to do with social economic abilities. It's more just convenient. It just didn't take time. Just didn't have time.
To prepare lunch.
Yeah, and then it seemed like, okay, so I took it upon myself to bring, as best food I could. And now it's might as well I'll wait for that. Screw it. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how. So it's like things like that, to me, that just get in the way, maybe. Because it, like I said, good intentions. But how would you know that?
I guess they were thinking they would, like, if they, I don't know, were they looking at, the free lunch kids and paying kids, and they were going to put, I mean, they didn't even say, what was he going to do, try to aim for a 50-50 ratio, or I don't even know what they were planning to do. What is the fairness guidelines? It wasn't even spelled out in the policy. So we need to talk about that,
See, I'm thinking, as all these little tidbits are,
Sorry.
what do you call them? These
Vacations, sorry.
Points? Just the
points?
the main
or,
points about the,
I'm kind of leaning toward just pulling them all out.
pulling all the, not having the
Like the
sibling preference
and
and
the
the,
0.5 thing and the social economic fairness guidelines.
yeah.
Especially busing, because it seems to me it's just slowing down. It's like trying to swim in mud, basically. There's too many good things. I think I described it once.
Swimming in mud ever a good thing?
But it's like, I don't know, I had an analogy where it's like you got this good food here that I gotta go across the building to get. But right here in front of me, I got cake and donuts and pizza.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't want to walk way over there for some So some grapes and some tomatoes and apples, and I got this pizza right here.
But what about the heartburn and the indigestion?
Yeah, but you're not gonna think about that, the dogs
Yeah,
are
the
pretty
kids-
good right now, right?
Have cast iron stomachs, you know.
So, but the simplification idea, so that's gotta be part of our recommendation,
That's
how to
right.
get it more simple. I mean, yeah. So, anyway, to the bottom of it, again, there just needs to be more, we want to make all the points we want to make in our presentation, so people really understand the transportation, they understand the way the intention of the policy, what actually happened,
So-
how the citywides were supposed to
So
work.
PowerPoint is just another presentation, that's all it is? Because I don't really know a PowerPoint.
PowerPoint is the program that you use for making these, you know,
It's like
series of slides type presentations.
So I did this PowerPoint, so you just kind of look through that.
You've probably been to a library and somebody stood up there and they were giving a talk and they showed slides.
Okay.
That's basically all.
Well, I know Rochester Works has it where they show you a thing called Prove It, and you learn all of that. That's what I'm trying to learn. Because I don't be wanting to look like, what?
So
I
put
want to
these
know what
great
you're talking
pictures
about.
in here, and you know, it's like I have this right here where see all this big road, and so that's kind of like when you put your kid on the bus in the morning because you need a babysitter.
Right.
So he's just driving around and round and round. So I just kind of use that to kind of emphasize that kind of thing. So that would be a problem.
Okay, so I'm going to resend the link to you guys to make sure you can get into this. And please write on it or insert sentences.
So
or if you don't want to write a sentence, just write a point you'd like to be included, like don't forget about this and that. You know? Because I want to keep sort of making sure we have all the points, and then people go to sleep with language like this. It's just the way I write, but I want to turn it more into something more picture-oriented and simpler language for a PowerPoint.
Are we meeting up
That's
next
where we're
week?
headed.
Yeah, one thing I
Or in
was
2 weeks?
just thinking was maybe particularly condensing down the old policy elements.
Too much detail.
Well, yeah, I think people are going to start glazing over.
Okay.
And that's why I did the PowerPoint because
Right.
I thought it would be a
I mean, I think he wants the basic elements of what the old
Yeah.
policy, but in the end, the intent of the old policy doesn't really matter, right? The results.
The results are
matter.
Okay.
Right? And what we're going to propose as a replacement matters.
Okay.
I think the intent, original intent.
Okay,
maybe
so
not,
focus
not
on-
some of it, but not as maybe as much as
On
is
it.
here.
Focus on results
Yeah.
more than intent.
Yeah.
That's a good.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. That's
Because with all the intent, it's just slowing everything else down. If you got all these choices, and you got, I don't know, 5% of the population making these choices, they kind of mess everything else up. Particularly when all those choices happen in different schools,
Yeah.
kind of just makes it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I didn't see this as being what we present to people at all.
Mhm.
This is just like, I want to make sure we get all the stuff out on the table
I
that
think-
we want to include and then edit it down and maybe come to the heart of it.
Right.
So like
Well,
the
I
point you
think-
just made.
Right, I
intent
think in
is-
general, so they have full time to digest it too.
Mhm.
Because I think if they're hearing this for the first time and they're not familiar with any of it, to hear it, see it, and
And then
then
have
immediately come up with questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them may not have time to process and really get their minds around it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It just
Well, there's a
means
thought.
more time and a little bit more complexity around
Well, yeah.
doing this work.
And you may not get them back for a second session.
Yeah,
That's
right.
another downfall to that.
Right. But even if you don't get the questions answered, I think, in a sense, what we're doing is the work of the information and communication that never happened,
Mhm.
right? And it's still not happening. Clearly, all these people out here trying to figure it out. They don't know what's going on, and they're all being explained one by one how it works, or maybe not even explained very well. So,
Well, that's kind of where
It's gotta be more efficient
I
way
wanted
to
to
do
do is
this.
that, just concentrate on repeating all this, maybe one by one.
Yeah, I think that it's also important when we're stressing what we're trying to get to is to emphasize we're trying to build more community into this, get more relationship between the school and the parents of the kids, have friendships made in the school, extend back into the neighborhood. And also, one of the problems we've got with the police issue right now is the fact that we've gone to such, they're chasing all over town. They're never really part of the community the way they used to be at one point. And the objective, I think, of what we're trying to get to is to have people know each other more on the local level. And
Are we finding out? I'm sorry, she has something to say. Are we finding out, like, if the kids, okay, they keep talking about 44 is ranked low. What are they ranked low in? Are the kids having problem reading? Are the kids having problem comprehension, language art? Like, what's the low? Like, we always hear that Rochester is low in education, but what parts of low? Math, reading,
It's everything.
It's everything. It's the test scores. It's, so.
Does the district have its own official Facebook page?
I think so, yeah,
I should know that.
I think they do.
Yeah, it's pretty in-depth.
I go to the
RCSD.
website all the time, but not to
yeah,
Facebook
the
page.
website, I don't know if they've got a Facebook.
Oh,
page,
Facebook.
I think they do, I gotta look it up. I think they do. Are you on Facebook?
I think that would be, if they don't, I think that would be a really good way to at least, it's another avenue to get information
I'm
like
about
this
to look
out.
and see now.
So many people are on Facebook, obviously,
Mhm.
right? And obviously, it can't be your website, which has all the information, hopefully, in the world that anyone needs. But if you can push out, announcements of this meeting when it's going to happen, or they could even push out if they haven't been, the lottery information. 2 weeks away is your deadline for the lottery.
Yeah,
Get
absolutely.
in here and sign up, or whatever it is. So.
Yeah.
So many people are on that these days,
Yeah.
and
There's
it's,
so many opportunities to.
right.
I mean, in the old days, we didn't have choices other than to, well, maybe we need to create a parent center, and maybe we still do. And maybe there's still a real big argument for having a concrete, place where people can walk in, or maybe we put them in libraries. I don't know, but we have to figure out the information piece, because the only way that this policy and whatever new iteration we make of it is going to work.
Yeah, it's one,
So.
right here.
Okay, there you go. All right, well, we got to wrap up, so 2 weeks? You guys up for
Yeah, see,
meeting in 2 weeks?
for the policy writing, we're meeting next week, is it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're meeting next
So you
week
do want
for
to see
that.
us next week?
No, that's
so
for
there's
the other
another,
group.
There's
Oh.
another group that's looking at a document that's already been written with recommendations.
Am I in that group, Mr. Boutte, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm,
Because, no, not that I don't care about coming out, because I could do some research and get ready for the next 2 weeks with the school.
yeah, in
Yeah.
2 weeks we'll be meeting for this.
Sure, do you all feel like you'd like to meet again for this? Sure. Okay, so we'll just keep
Yeah.
it going, and if we could have a conversation online here about.
Yeah, if we
points.
can develop this online and then
Yeah.
maybe try to have
And then we
Greg
could
or somebody
try to
put it in the
synthesize it
PowerPoint.
down into a
yeah.
PowerPoint and with simpler language.
They
and
put
all
that the
that.
Rochester City School District wants to see every child succeed. Students must be able to read at a grade level and attend school every day. And then they put the numbers and stuff down there. So I'm glad that you said something, because I never thought about looking at art on Facebook. So I'm going to look at it. And I watched that So Need to Know talks about Rochester City School District, and that Spanish lady, she talked about Rochester in a whole. Like the poverty here, that we're the fifth largest poorest city. And if we were a country, we would be 84 with Thailand. That's sad and scary.
Yeah.
That's very scary. And they put uncommon schools. I want to show them that they don't have stereotypes. They're putting all that stuff.
Kind of why I'm wondering how that socioeconomic thing actually plays in. But again, I know it was good intentions.
When you go on
Write your
PBS,
questions up there.
when you go on
I'll resend the link and
Yeah.
write all over this, really, so that
Mhm.
PBS,
Okay.
does a lot of stuff. You look on PBS,
Yeah.
they put us in there.
Okay,
Okay,
so
what's
2 weeks from
weeks?
today?
What is the date in 2
that
weeks?
date?
Do we know?
At some point, I'm going to take a week's vacation, but
Do it next week?
no, we got a meeting next week too.
Okay.
Well,
It's on the 7th.
I mean, we could break for longer then if you want to take a,
Well, let me
Should I
take
sign on
a,
here? Miss?
oh,
I think we should make Brent come back up
So
here
2 weeks is the 8th?
the 7th. Oh, yeah, the 8th, yeah.
8th of September?
The 8th.
8th of September,
Mm,
okay?
the 8th.
Okay,
We'll see you then.
8th of September.
At 4:30, right?
Mhm.